Hi, welcome back. I am starting the Assassin's Apprentice, which is book one of the Farseer Trilogy, which is part of a larger series all by Robin Hobb that are interconnected. I've heard a lot of great things about this series. I'm super excited to get started, and I thought I would vlog my process of reading at least this trilogy, and then we'll see if I continue and go from there. Okay, I am on chapter 6. I just finished chapter 5. Let's talk about Assassin's Apprentice so far. So if you see and watch the like sped up part of me reading, um, you'll see a part where I start ranting about the book, and it's not a bad rant. It's not like a I'm upset rant. It's, well, I guess I was upset, but like in a positive way. Like the book got me emotionally invested. So to summarize, like we have Fitz, right? He's been dropped off to like this place where both Verity and Chastity, not Chastity, Chivalry, where both Verity and Chivalry are staying. But Chivalry's away, and like the grandfather of him, we don't really know his mom, is like, hey, I've been carrying him for 6 years. You take care of your bastard son. Then they give him to Burrick, I think, who names him Fitz, which quite literally means son of. And when you don't have a name attached, it's like bastard. It means son of no one, bastard, right? So he's just literally calling him bastard. And then like everyone is constantly reminding him that he's a bastard. And then we got to this part, let me find it. I found it, and this is the passage that if you see me reading a passage and then ranting more, this is the passage that I read to my partner because I was so mad. He just got some new clothes, and he's looking at the clothes, and he goes, 2 were familiar ordinary stuff, and a familiar brown that most of the children my age seemed to wear, but one was of thin blue cloth, and on the breast was a buck's head, done in silver thread. Burrick and the other men-at-arms wore a leaping buck as their emblem. I had only seen the buck's head on the jerkins of Regal and Verity, which are his 2 uncles. So I looked at it and wondered, but wondered too at the slash of red stitching that cut it diagonally, marching right over the design. It means you're a bastard, Burrick told me bluntly when I asked him about it. I've acknowledged royal blood, but a bastard all the same. That's all. It's just a quick way of showing your royal blood, but are of the true line. How many ways can they remind this poor child that he is not from a marriage, born of a marriage? Anyways, and then we meet Shade, which is supposed to be the importance of the title Assassin's Apprentice. Shade is teaching Fitz how to be an assassin for the king. The king openly tells him that he wants to use him as a tool, but that he will never want anything as long as the king is using him as a tool. So there's that. And him and Shade's relationship is very similar to him and Burrick's relationship. They're both very strong, like father figures, I would say, at this point to him. But he tells him to steal from the king, and he refuses. And it was like a test of loyalty, which he upholds. I didn't really understand it, and I had to do a little bit of research on it. But after reading what other people thought of it, I got it. So he doesn't do the test, and they apologize to him for testing his loyalty like that. But after the king explains to him that he was doing that loyalty test and that he'll never do anything like that again, he does take the knife from the king's room in front of the king's eyes, so it's not stealing. Basically, the king lets him, and then gives it to Shade to prove not only his loyalty to the king by not stealing from him, but prove his loyalty to Shade by completing the task, and also basically in the end telling them to just shut up. So it was a form of loyalty to both the king and Shade without betraying anybody. And that's the first fourth of the book, so that's where I'm at. I'm going to keep reading. I'm really enjoying it so far. It is very much a slow build-up with a trilogy that is part of a larger series. That's not shocking, and I'm not finding it slow at all because Fitz is interesting. The only thing I will say is that the passage of time is very vague. Like, I can tell that Fitz is older than when he was 6 and dropped off, but there's no, like, clear indicators of how old he is when the king finds him and he starts training, when Shade starts training him as an assassin. Like, there's no indicators of that. So, that's all. It's very early. I'm desperate to read this book because I didn't get to read it yesterday. I haven't even gotten ready for the day because I just want to enjoy my coffee and my coffee cake, read a little bit of my book, and then get ready. It's super early in the day. The light that I normally have, the natural lighting, isn't even working, so I have to have the overhead on, so I might be a little bit yellow. But that should be okay. Let's go ahead and dive into chapter 8. One thing I did notice, so I started editing the videos, even though I'm only going to be about halfway through, of the first quarter. And I say Farseer, but I think it's Farseer. The Farseer trilogy? Farseer? I don't think it's Farseer. It's definitely not, because it's F-A-R, and I read it as F-R-A. And that's why I mispronounced. I am 10 chapters through the Assassin's Apprentice book 1 of the Farseer trilogy. And I have so many thoughts. Okay, you can probably see the tabs, but like in the last couple chapters alone, right? Like so many thoughts. So in chapter 7, okay, we're just going to go back. We're going to go back. In chapter 7, after Chivalry's died, Fitz is talking to Shade, and then Shade, this is what happens. He took my chin in his hand and turned my face so that I looked into his eyes. Your father's death should be all the warning you need, now or ever. You're a bastard boy. We're always a risk and a vulnerability. We're always expendable, except when we're an absolute necessity to their own security. I've taught you quite a bit these last few years, but hold this lesson closest and keep it always before you. If ever you make it so that they don't need you, they will kill you. And then farther down the page, it goes, we are the king's boy. His exclusively, in a way perhaps you have not thought about. So he basically is telling Fitz he's a bastard as well, right? Skip to them finding out that there's like a raid happening on a town closer to Buckkeep, right? A town I believe that Shade says he's born in. And this part right here, dead, taken hostage, or hiding in the woods still. There was a tightness in Shade's voice that drew my eyes to his face. I was amazed at the pain I saw there. He saw me staring at him and shrugged mutely. The feeling that these folk belong to you, that their disaster is your failure, it'll come to you as you grow. It goes with the blood. He left me to ponder that as he nudged his weary mount into a walk. I think that's okay. That's all. So there was suspicion in like my book club that he was saying like not just that he's a bastard, but he's specifically like Shade is Shrewd's like bastard brother. Yeah, because they're the same age, I think. They're older, yeah. And he said he was there for all of Chivalry's life, so yes. And this confirms, like, it goes with the blood. Like, he's feeling that pain, right? Like, to me, and I think this is chapter 10, it's just confirming that. But then also the people, oh my god, there's so much that happened! Okay. Let's see. I like how Sharam helped Fitz know where to stand and follow behind Verity when walking down into like the dinner. But the other one I'm trying to find and mention is this one right here. I haven't seen or heard them until Shade pointed them out. I would have ridden right past them, and the other monumentous thing that happened to me at that point was that I realized I was different from everyone else I knew. Imagine a seeing child growing up in a blind village, where no one else even suspects the possibility of such a sense. The child would have no words for colors or for degrees of light. The others would have no conception of the way in which the child perceived the world. So it was in that moment, as we sat our horses and stared at the folk, for Shade was wondered out loud, misery in his voice, what is wrong with them? What's gotten into them? I knew. All the threads that ran back and forth between folk, that twined from mother to child, from man to woman, all the kinships they extend to family and neighbor, to pets and stock, even to the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky. All were gone. All my life, without knowing it, I had depended on those threads of feelings to let me know when other live things were about. Dogs, horses, even chickens had them as well as humans, and so I would look up at the door before Burrich entered it, or know where there was one more newborn puppy in the stall neatly buried under the straw. So I would wake when Shade opened the staircase, because I could feel people, and that sense was the only one that always alerted me first, that let me know to use my eyes and ears and nose as well, to see what they were about. But these folk gave off no feelings at all. So he feels people, it sounds like, through their connection to other people. And so they're not connected, like they have no kinship, they have no connection, they're not human. He says they're not beast either, because he can feel like animals, right? And like they're fighting and they're just ravenous and like they're not human. But it also gives us a little bit more into Fitz's powers and the world and what Old Wit might be. And then by the end of chapter 10, Shade is determined to have Fitz taught the skill. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get into Fitz being taught the skill. But I want to know if the skill is different than Wit. Like, are they different powers, or are they the same thing and he already has like a natural tendency to use the skill untrained, and that's what like the old wit is about? No clue. But this is so freaking good. It's so good. I need to get book 2 now because I think I'm in a book club that's going to read the whole thing through. Can't wait. And I need to talk about something else. Let me grab it off the shelf. Okay. There are a couple of books that got me into reading, a couple of points in my life. Like, you know, in elementary school, it was Junie B. Jones. In high school, it was Harry Potter and Twilight. Well, actually, I guess that was middle school. Harry Potter was middle school, Twilight. So Harry Potter technically came after this book. In the 6th grade, my brother was in the 7th grade, and he got to read this book from his teacher, and he gave it to me for like the extra week that he had it from his teacher's library in 7th grade. And I had that teacher in 7th grade. I ended up reading all of these books from her. Literally, she started getting them early and would send them home with me so that me and my brother could read them as they were released from Scholastic. This entire series is Ranger's Apprentice, Ruins of Gorlin, is book 1. And they, middle grade, adult, same vibes, except there's magic in this one, and like the magic in this is never, it's always disproven, kind of like it might be there, but it's never confirmed. Same grades, same character that I love. Oh my god, Will and Fitz. Will's 16 though, Fitz is only like 13. Not a bastard, but an orphan. This book series, the way I felt reading this in 6th grade all the way up until I've reread it like last year or the year before is the way I'm feeling reading this as an adult. This is doing what this did for me back then, and I could not be happier. And if you're open to reading middle grade and you've read this and you want something just as good, this is going to be it for you. It's, I think, set in England is like the fantasy land that it's based off of. The author's Australian. It is very similar in politics and roles as like this, but there's not really magic in it. And with the being middle grade, I don't know if this one has romance, and this one has very little romance sprinkled throughout like 11 books. I mean, like literally like D plot romance. Like it's not main. I can't explain how it was at the beginning of chapter 10, and I was like, this whole I'm gonna have to reread the Ranger's Apprentice series. I reread them like a year or two ago, and I read 1 through 4, and I stopped on 5, and I know exactly why I stopped on 5. 1 through 4 are my absolute favorites. But I want to reread the whole thing now. This is going to be a 5-star. It's a 5-star. I finished The Assassin's Apprentice, and even though it is my first book of February, finishing it on February 3rd, I am actually so positive it's going to be my top read of February. I meant to check in every quarter of the book, but I think I stopped at the halfway point because after chapter 11, I could not put this thing down. You can see that right before chapter 11, I start getting really intrigued. There's a lot more notes, and then about that halfway point, I have way less notes because I couldn't stop reading. I just intrigue a little bit at the beginning, high intrigue from chapters 10 and 11, maybe 7 to 11, and then just attached to my hand, glued to my palm. I finished it within that day once reading chapter 11. I couldn't even pace myself for my book club, and even now I want to pick up Royal Assassin, but I'm trying to be so patient and wait till the 15th until the club finishes, because I loved reading with them and I loved having people to chat with. Other people finished early with me and we were chatting, and I'm still catching up on the people who are reading it at the speed that they're supposed to be. So I'm being really, really patient and trying not to rush into it, but it was so good. And I stand by what I said at chapter 10 or 11, that this book reminds me of The Ranger's Apprentice. The Ranger's Apprentice is very much a little bit less serious, less heavy, but not serious. It's very serious and heavy topics for a middle grade book. Has a lot of political intrigue and commentary on like politics and royal families. It also deals a lot with treaties between different countries and governing bodies and how that kind of plays into the royal life. Both of our main characters being young boys who are trying to discover themselves. One who now knows he's a bastard in the royal family and is trying to figure out what that means, being of the royal family but not being like the royal lineage. And the other one who's like an orphan who feels like he has no place in the world, being specially picked for a role that he has always viewed with mystique. So that's kind of like the similarities between their characters. I love both of those boys so much, and I love Fitz so much. In terms of other characters that I absolutely adore, it quite literally is, I mean, I don't not like Shade and I don't not like Bert. I love them both. But I stan Lady Patience, her maid or handmaiden Lacey, and Prince Verity. I think at the end, Fitz mentions that when he thinks my king in his heart, he now thinks about Prince Verity, not King Shrewd, and I stand by that. Oh my gosh, I stand by that. I hated, everybody I hated really got their comeuppance, except Prince Regal. Can't wait to see, he's obviously got to come back in some way, but obviously I think he's going to need help. I thought Galen Gowan was his uncle, like a young uncle, so the half-brother reveal wasn't that shocking to me, though, because somebody in the book club was suspecting half-brother, and we were like, oh, I wonder which one it is. This book is just fantastic. Anybody who has ever enjoyed a fantasy should pick it up and read it. I understand that if you are a plot-driven person, that you might not like this one as much, because it's very character-driven, and like I said, it's pretty slow for the first 10 or so chapters, but once you reach that point, you're going, and I've heard it only picks up from here. That book 2 is phenomenal and very much faster read. But this series is also much about political intrigue rather than like action-based fantasy. It's not so much an adventure in terms of action. It is very much political intrigue and commentary, but like in such a fascinating, fun way. The world building, phenomenal. The writing, phenomenal. The characters, phenomenal. I hated or loved everybody that I was supposed to hate and love. Now that we've gone through the good part, in terms of Fitz's powers, though, I'm still trying to figure out the difference between the wit and the skill. If there even is a difference between the wit and skill, because it sounds like Verity's dog Leon might share the same feeling and connection that Fitz shares with his 2 dogs. On to dogs. I sobbed. Made me cry in chapter 2, but I could handle it. We were going to move on from the death of my boy Nosy. Then you give him another dog who sacrifices himself. And I'm like, Robin Hobb, do you hate dogs? Because I think you do. Only to discover Nosy not dead. Until 3 chapters later, Nosy dead again. Sacrifices self. Robin Hobb, you hate dogs. And you hate my happiness. Expect my therapy bills. How do you have me grieving for the same dog for 22 chapters of a book? From chapter 2 to 24, I'm grieving the same dog. Do you understand how evil that is? I literally sobbed. Called my sister, who's also a reader, to sob to her. Then explained to my partner what had happened and that I was grieving the same dog, and sobbed more. And then I recommended this book to everybody that I know. But how am I, after crying that much and grieving the same dog for 20 freaking 2 chapters, supposed to want to read 15 more of these books. Why do I hurt myself like this? And why do I want to continue hurting myself like this? If I knew it was good for me, I would put this series down right now and never pick it up again. But I can't go on through my life without knowing what happens to Fitz. So I will be reading Royal Assassin February 16th, the second my book club starts the next book. I will be there. I will be sad. I will hate myself for it because the hole and pain in my heart when I was finishing the last chapter of this book, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to read a book again. I have 2 weeks before I have to read the next book. I gotta pick one of these off my shelf, but all I can think about is my man, Fitz Chivalry Farseer. Robin Hobb, you are evil. So to summarize, I give this book 5 stars. It can be a little bit slow if you're not into character building and you're more so into like an action-packed plot story for an adventure. But for me, this is the exact kind of fantasy that I like. If you love things like The Night Circus, Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, anything in like that kind of realm. If the reason you read books is character development and character connection, then I think that this series is for you. If the reason you read books is to figure out what's going on with the plot, maybe you're going to have a hard time with this one, but I think everyone should read this. It is phenomenal. It is 5 stars. I don't doubt it will be my February book of the month, but I don't know. It's only day 5. I got a lot of other books to read. So that's my review on The Assassin's Apprentice. I'm going to keep reading the Farseer trilogy. I'm going to be doing The Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest. Let me know if you guys want them in one video or if you want each book, like if I can do a trilogy all together, or if you prefer each individual book getting its own video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more, go ahead and just follow along here or on Fable. I can send you the club that I'm reading with.